All right, students, hope you're having a great day. This is our, excuse me, lecture on section 3.5. We're going, this is part A, for example, or I think it's broken up into 3 sections. So we're going to do this over a couple days. So here is the essential standards. We're going to learn how to complete the square. We're going to solve the quadratic equations by completing the square. So we're going to, you have to memorize the process of completing the square. I can use this process to solve quadratic equations and rewrite quadratic expressions in different forms, okay? So here's the process. First, we're going to deal with this format, x squared plus bx plus c. There is no a value in front of x squared, and so we are going to learn how to do that first. Find 1/2 of the coefficient on the x term. What is the coefficient on the x term? That is the b value. We're going to take half of it and then we're going to square it. Okay. Once we do that, we are then going to add and subtract. So we're going to add it and subtract it from the expression. By doing that, we haven't changed the expression's value. Okay. Why do we do that? Well, that is because when we have this portion of the expression, it becomes a perfect square and we can factor that, okay? It will always be x plus the b value divided by 2 and that whole quantity squared. So you don't have to stress out about trying to factor it, all right? Once we're finished with that, we can combine any constants that are not a part of the perfect square and add them together and simplify that. So that'll make more sense as we continue on. So here we go. I realized that x squared plus 8x plus 16 is a perfect square. However, let's apply our process. So we know that b equals 8. b over 2 is 4. b squared is 16. All right, so what do? We add 16 and we subtract 16. The reason for doing that is because this portion becomes a perfect square. So we will factor that. That will become, what is the b divided by 2? That is 4, and that value squared. So I will then combine and simplify the remaining part of the expression. That happens to equal 0. We don't have to do that, but for the sake of learning, I have shown it to you. So this becomes x plus 4 squared. Now, that particular problem is a good way to start. You would not have had to follow the step to do this particular problem to factor it because it was originally a perfect square, but not all of your expressions will be that way. So it's good to have a process because this is a very valuable tool to solve quadratic expressions and equations. All right, so let's see. B is now -10. So b divided by 2 is equal to -5. b squared is equal to 25, okay? All right, so now what do? I add 25 and I subtract 25. Why do we do that? We do that because this part of the expression now is a perfect square. So let's factor that perfect square, x, and then what is the term here? It's going to be the -5. It's b divided by 2, so do not stress about that. -5 squared, and then we have plus 29 minus 25, and this was the expression that we created, and this was the remaining part of the expression, which we're now going to simplify. And so the answer would be x minus 5 squared plus 4. And this is my answer. Okay. All right, why don't you try one? Welcome back. So what's our step? We take b, which is equal to 12. We divide it by 2, which becomes 36. B over 2 squared is 36. Yes? So what I do, I add 36 and I subtract 36. All right, why do we do that? We do that because this portion of the expression now becomes a perfect square, and I can factor that into x. Well, what was b divided by 2? 6. That expression squared. Now I have to simplify the remaining part of my expression, which is a +1 and -36, and I get a minus 35. And this is my answer. So x plus 6, that quantity squared, minus 35. Let's continue on. We have b equal to 3. So b over 2 is 3/2. B over 2 squared is equal to 9 over 4. So I have to add 9 over 4 and subtract 9 over 4. I do this because this highlighted in blue now becomes a perfect square, and I can factor that accordingly. And that would be, what's b divided by 2? It's 3/2, and that's that quantity squared. Now I need to simplify. So let's take it into steps. There's my minus 9/4, and I have a -5. Let's create a common denominator. So that would become 20 over 4. And let's just highlight, this is the region, or this part of the expression was my perfect square. That's why I did what we did. And now we are in the process of simplifying the remaining part of the expression. And then the answer will be, and that will be 29/4. Okay. What is b? b is equal to -3/4. b over 2. So I have to multiply that times 1/2. That will be -3 over 8. b over 2 squared equals positive 9 over 64. I have to add 9 over 64 and subtract 9 over 64. Why do I have to do that? By the way, we didn't change the expression value. We added and subtracted the exact same number. And essentially, it's the same expression. What's highlighted in blue now is a perfect square, and I can factor that. X, well, what was b divided by 2? B divided by 2 was minus 3/8. It becomes x minus 3/8, that quantity squared. And let's simplify this. So I have minus 9 over 64, and let's have a common denominator of 64 with positive 1 becomes plus 64 over 4, and then we will combine. This part of the expression is my perfect square that we created, and this, it's what's left. And now we need to just simplify. And we will get plus 55, yes, over 64, and this is my answer. Okay. Why don't you try the next one? Okay, welcome back. So b is equal to -1. b over 2 is -1/2. b squared, b over 2 squared is equal to a positive 1/4. All right, I have to add a 4th and subtract a 4th. Why do we do that? We do that because this portion of the expression, x squared minus x plus 1/4, becomes a perfect square, and I can factor that. So just to show you longhand, so let's assume that you're not seeing it right now. So we're kind of skipping the step of rewriting this whole thing. So now this is a perfect square, okay? This is going to get simplified, all right? So let's factor the perfect square. So we have x, what was b divided by 2? It was minus 1/2, and that is going to be squared. Don't believe it? Go ahead and multiply it out and prove it to yourself. But, and then I want to add 7. I need to create a common denominator, so I have 28 over 4 minus 1 over 4, and I will simplify one more time. Squared plus 27/4. And this was the part of the expression that we created in a perfect square. And this was the part that we had to just simplify, okay? All right, let's move on to the next. With this technique, we can now use this technique to complete the square and solve for quadratic equations. So now I have an equation, so I have an equality sign. So I have a quadratic that's in the form of x squared plus bx plus c equals 0. It must be in this form. So what we're going to do is we're going to complete the square, and we are going to solve for the values of x that make this expression true. So how do we do that? Well, same exact process. We will take b, which is -20. We will divide by 2, which becomes -10, and b over 2 squared is equal to 100. I must add 100 and I must subtract 100, okay? And so I will just, for chagrins, write it out. I will not do this all the time. I have plus 96 minus 100 equals 0. We added 100, subtracted the 100, that expression still equals 0. Okay, why did we do this? We did this because this portion of the expression is now a perfect square. So we can factor that. We get x, what was b divided by 2, minus 10 squared, and then we have to combine the remaining part of the expression to simplify it, okay? So we get minus 4. What's our problem? Yeah, minus 4, and it's all equal to 0. Okay, so what's the goal? We're trying to solve the quadratic equation. So we're not done. Now we are going to move our 4 over, and we will get x minus 10 squared is equal to a positive 4. And then I can take, oh goodness, that's way too thick. What's going on here? I can take the square root of both sides, and I will get x minus 10 is equal to plus or minus 2. Okay, don't forget the plus or minus. All right. I will then solve for x is equal to, I could probably drop the parentheses on that last step there. Okay. I will get x is equal to 10 plus or minus 2. And so we will find x to be equal to 8, 12. All right, let's do another one. So we have b is equal to 14, b over 2 is equal to 7, b over 2 squared is equal to 49. I have to add 49 and I have to subtract 49. The reason for doing this is because we have created a perfect square within the expression, and then we'll simplify the remaining part of the expression. So let's factor that, and we will get x, what was b divided by 2? That was 7, x plus 7 squared. And then we have a positive 40 and a negative 49. So we have minus 9 is equal to 0. This was the part of my perfect square, and this portion of the expression was just the remaining part that we just simplified. Okay, so we're not finished yet. We're still solving this equation. So we're going to get x plus 7 squared is equal to 9. I will then take the square root of both sides. I will find that x plus 7 is equal to plus or minus 3. I will find x is equal to negative 7 plus or minus 3, and let's simplify that further. So negative 7 minus 3 is a negative 10. Negative 7 plus 3 is a negative 4. I'm just checking my answers. Yes, there are the answers. Okay. All right, continuing on. b is equal to negative 1. b over 2 is negative 1/2. b over 2 squared is equal to a positive 1/4. I add a fourth. I add 1/4. I subtract 1/4 to the expression, and I factor it. The reason for doing that is I have created a perfect square within the expression. I will get x. What was b divided by 2? That was minus 1/2 squared. I will then have minus a fourth minus 4 over 4, and all of that is equal to 0. This is the portion of my expression that was the perfect square that we created, and this was the remaining part of the expression, which we must now simplify. So moving on, I get x minus a half squared minus 5/4 equals 0. Yeah. So now I need to rearrange the expression and solve for x. 5/4. I take the square root of both sides. I get x minus a half is equal to plus or minus 5/4. And so I get x is equal to 1/2 plus or minus 5/4. We do want to, oh, I actually made a mistake, I see. Can't just drop that, that would be the square root of 5 over 2. Square root of 5 over 2, okay? And we'll leave it in that form for this time. Okay, let's try another one. You try it yourself. Welcome back. I just wanted to point out that it says the answers are completing the square, and we want the complex solutions because we're getting ready to have to apply our knowledge of complex numbers. All right, b is equal to 2. b over 2 is 1. b squared is 1. So we are going to add 1, subtract 1. Why do we do that? We do that because we just created a perfect square. So we get, what is b divided by 2? It's 1. And then I have plus 26 minus 1 equals 0. Okay, plus 26 minus 1 is 25. We're going to move that over to the right-hand side, and we will get x plus 1 squared is equal to negative 25. Just for this becomes this portion here. Okay, now we got to take the square root, and we will get x plus 1 is equal to the square root of negative 25. Well, negative 1 is in there, so we got to pull that out. That's I, and we have 5, and it's actually written this way, I should say, plus or minus 5i. That is the value of the square root of negative 25. Okay, and continuing on, I get x equals negative 1 plus or minus 5i. Okay, a couple more and then we're done. b equals negative 9/4. b over 2, I just multiply times a half, so I get negative 9 over 8. b over 2 squared is equal to positive 81 over 64. Yeah, which is ugly. All right, so then I'm going to add 81 over 64 and subtract 81 over 64. Why do I do that? Because this now part of the expression becomes a perfect square. So let's go ahead and factor that. So what do don't stress out about what that value is, because it's just this b over 2 value, which is minus 9/8. So minus 9/8, that's squared. And then we have to add half. 1/2 to 81/64. So I'll do this off to the side. 1/2 becomes, if I want to do a common denominator, I get 32 minus 81 over 64, and I will get minus 49 over 64. So minus 49 over 64 equals 0. Okay, now we're continuing to solve. Well, this is just me doing some math. Get that out of your way. So then what do? We say x minus 9 over 8 squared is equal to a positive 49 over 64. We can take the square root of both sides, and we will get x minus 9/8 is equal to, square root of 49 is 7, square root of 64 is 8, and that's plus or minus. And we need to continue to solve, and we get 9/8 plus or minus 7/8. So we should be able to simplify this rather easily. So 9 plus 7 is 16/8. So that's 2. And then 9 minus 7 is 2/8, which becomes 1/4. One more to go. Try it yourself. Welcome back. B is equal to negative 2/3. B over 2, just multiply by a half. I get negative 2/6. B over 2 squared equals a positive 4/36. I'm going to add 4/36 and subtract 4/36. Why do we do that? We do that because we just created a perfect square within the expression. So let's factor that perfect square. What is my factor? What's b divided by 2? Well, b divided by 2 was minus 2/6. I have to square it. Now I need to simplify the rest of my expression. I am going to what did I do? Oh, I see. Let's 15/9. I have negative 15/9, and I have minus 4/36. Well, 4/36 is the same as 1/9, so that becomes minus 16/9. So I have minus 16/9, and that is all equal to 0. Okay, so we're continuing with the goal of finding the values of x that makes the statement true. That portion of our expression was our perfect square, and this was us simplifying the values that are outside of that perfect square. So x minus 2/6 squared is equal to a positive 16/9. Now what do? We take the square root of both sides, and we find that x minus 2/6 is equal to plus or minus square root of 16 is 4, square root of 9 is 3, and so x equals 2/6 plus or minus, I'm just going to 8/6. And so x is equal to 2 plus 8 is 10. 10 divided by 6, 5/3, if you want to simplify that. And then 2 minus 8 is negative 6. Negative 6/6 becomes -1. And that concludes our lesson for the day. As always, reach out to me if you have any questions.